Well, things could be just about to get quite interesting. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And if you saw my video last night, we all know the Urel Hato Here We Go has arrived. Yes, finally, it's starting to happen. Let that be the first domino that kicks off all of the rest of the transfer stuff so we can get it out of the way and start focusing on the football. And I've got a couple of brand new things to talk about today, which is awesome because I like to keep it fresh. But before I get into it, guys, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking or sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so interestingly, one of the things I mentioned in my announcement video for Hato yesterday is that although I'm really glad we got that signing through, and I think it looks like we're starting to fill a lot of holes in the squad, one of the holes I can still see is at centre-back. And the centre-back situation's just a bit nuts, isn't it? You know, what's going on with Trevor Chalobah? Is Axel Disasi actually going to get sold? Does anyone really want to buy him? What's happening with Benoit Badiashile? Will Wesley Fofana ever be fit ever again? The only solid centre-back we've got on our books at the moment is Levi Colwill. And when I say solid, I mean he's the only one that we know is going to stay around and play in the team. There's a lot of question marks over everyone else, and we haven't been linked with exactly loads of really good options either. But something is starting to resurface. Now, I will caveat this with the player that I'm just about to talk about is not only linked to us, but supposedly we maintain interest and it's a really affordable price. So if we can look past our Leonardo DiCaprio style no 25 or over policy, then this is one I 100% think we should go for. It is ex-Chelsea Academy star and rising talent Marc Guehi. And this isn't new news, right? But it has gone really quiet for a while. I've just started to see recently that he's still interested in moving on from Crystal Palace, and we are one of a few clubs that are linked with him. Now, the biggest link for a while seemed to be Liverpool, right? And, you know, obviously that makes sense. Champions, spending money up the wazoo. Why wouldn't you want to go to Liverpool, right? If Marc Guehi solidly gets the offer to go to Liverpool, you would have to think that's probably what he'll choose. But there is some speculation to say that Arne Slot has actually got his eyes set on a different centre-back from Red Bull Leipzig, and in my eyes that would kind of leave Chelsea as easily the next best option for him. He's a London boy, let's bring him home. So the most interesting thing about this deal is the purported price is actually only £40 million. So we were in for Guehi a little while ago, weren't we? And we were being quoted like 70, 80, something like that. Obviously just come off the back of massive Euros and still had a little bit more time left on his deal, so that makes sense. But if we could get Marc Guehi for 40 mil, we absolutely should, and I don't even know what we're waiting for. Like, for me personally, and I've said it a load of times, I'd love to keep hold of Trevor Chalobah and keep trying to push and develop him, but if that isn't possible, Marc Guehi is probably a step up, if I'm being completely honest. Marc Guehi was easily one of England's best players in our last Euros campaign, and has just played a massive part in leading Crystal Palace to their first ever trophy. He's got leadership experience, he's still not old by any stretch, he's like 25, do you know what I mean? He's got plenty of time to play quality football in front of him, and as far as I'm concerned, I think that should be in a Chelsea shirt. I didn't really want to let him go in the first place. He had that amazing loan out of Swansea, didn't he? And then we end up selling him to Crystal Palace in 2021, and the thing is, it was one of those, he's an academy product, we made 18 million for him, which was really good book profit. And to be fair, he probably wasn't ready to be thrown directly into the team right at that moment, but it did sting, and watching him go from strength to strength to strength over these last few years has been a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. I just honestly really see a partnership of him and Levi Colwill being phenomenal. Both different kind of players, both different kind of experience, but I think together would make a really solid centre-back pairing. And I can't remember what the actual statistic was, but last season we played like a ridiculous amount of different centre-back pairings, and you know what? It's been like that for the last few years now. If we want to get far in the Champions League and have an even possibility of a title run, having a solid defensive lineup that we kind of put in and out most games is going to be so important. And we've got a million centre-backs and we still can't choose between them, do you know what I mean? So we've obviously not been purchasing particularly well or focusing particularly well on that specific area. Badiashile and Disasi are just not the guys, are they? They're just absolutely not the guys. Disasi seems like he's 100% going to be on his way out if we can find a buyer for him, bearing in mind that he also spent the back half of last season on loan at Aston Villa. And Badiashile has never looked as good as he did in that first few months that we got him. Do you know what I mean? When we bought him, it was like, okay, cool, maybe we've got a real player on our hands here. And then he's just kind of always flattered to deceive ever since. So yeah, man, get Marc Guehi back on the books. That is what I want to see happen. And for that 40 mil, that just seems like a steal, doesn't it? Right, so moving on to a couple of potential outgoings now. This one is actually fascinating because there's basically been no news about this kid up until now, and all of a sudden it's exploded. And it is Marc Guiu. Guiu, do you know what I mean? I accidentally interchanged the way I say it. I'm pretty sure it's Marc Guiu. I will make a conscious effort to try and say it, Marc Guiu. But yeah, Marc Guiu was an absolute bargain that we got from Barcelona for 5 million when he literally only just started getting into their first team, and I think he scored quite an important goal in La Liga. And it was 5 mil, so we snapped him up and brought him over. Now, Marc Guiu has been unlucky because he actually had a really good campaign as like a, backup striker last season. He actually ended up joint third place top goal scorer in the Conference League last season, despite not really playing that much. He managed 6 goals across the campaign, although 3 of those were from one game. But ultimately was really starting to show, yeah, this kid's got something, and if he's developed in the right way, then maybe he could turn into something good. Now, bearing in mind that we've just got Liam Delap and João Pedro on board, it does look like that if we're going to keep Marc Guiu, then he's going to play that third backup striker role, which I think would be good for him. But I do agree, I think it would be great to get him out on loan because that will do one or two things. He'll either really start to develop into that striker we want him to be, or he'll just raise his value because we only paid 5 million for him and his book value's already gone down a little bit because he spent a season with us. So if we can get 15-20 mil for Marc Guiu at the end of the season, wicked. But let's have a chat about who's involved. So apparently, and interestingly enough, he is actually rebuffed an approach by Swansea in the Championship, and that was the first piece of news that I'd seen that anyone had been in for him, and since then it has exploded. The majority of the news is about Sunderland. Sunderland are really interested in coming in for Marc Guiu, and that sounds kind of a lot better, doesn't it? Sunderland are actually going in hard on their recruitment to try and stay in the Premier League, and a striker like Marc Guiu might be excellent for them as a backup who's not expecting to play every game but will fight for opportunities. The other 2 teams that have been mentioned are Leeds and Red Bull Leipzig, so you can understand why he's rebuffing Swansea when he's been approached by 2 Premier League teams and a Red Bull Leipzig that are supposedly anticipating that Ben Sesko will still leave. If they're anticipating losing Sesko and targeting Guiu to replace him, then they must rate him pretty highly. If Ben Sesko leaves, I think the Red Bull Leipzig loan would probably be the best. Just because the competitiveness of the Bundesliga is a little bit lower than the Premier League, he might be able to kind of find himself and develop, whereas a Premier League loan might be a little bit too much at this point in his development. But at the end of the day, if he can go to a relegation battling Premier League club, there is nothing more character building than that. So I like Marc Guiu, and I've talked about it a few times. I think if we're going to have 3 strikers, I think Marc Guiu is the best option for that third choice, rather than keeping Jackson around, because I think if you demote Jackson to the third choice striker, or even Liam Delap to the third choice because Jackson comes in, it's just going to cause problems, isn't it? People are just going to moan and complain. Squad harmony is so important, especially when it looks like we're going to have a lot of attacking players next season anyway. Someone like Marc Guiu, who would just be kind of happy to be around and take his opportunities and understand that's where he's at the moment, is going to be really valuable. But it also might mean that we're just going to have 2 strikers next season. I mean, you've got to bear it in mind, for the last couple of years, we've basically only had Nicholas Jackson. Obviously, Marc Guiu spent quite a long time out injured last season, but he wasn't featuring a lot anyway. Jackson was getting almost every game. So already, even if we don't go with the 3 strikers, having 2 proper centre forwards available to play in our team is already better than what we've had. And it is always good for there to be a 3-way tussle for one of your players, right? That obviously means that he's rated by a lot of clubs. And even if we can't expect him to eventually make his way into the Chelsea team, one way or the other, we're going to make some cash for him. And it just shows that the process is working. Right, so one more little news story to wrap things up today, and it is about Carney Chukwumeka. So Carney Chukwumeka spent all of, if not half of, last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund. And they really like him, and there have been conversations about selling Carney Chukwumeka to Borussia Dortmund for ages now. And the problem with anything involving Borussia Dortmund, it doesn't matter whether you're buying someone from them or whether you're trying to sell someone to them, they are just tricky, stingy, sticky, stodgy negotiators, right? And they are absolutely one of the best operators in football in that respect. So we wanted like 35 mil to 40 mil for Carney Chukwumeka. That does seem a little bit high, to be honest, bearing in mind that he spent quite a lot of time injured with us. And although he's played well at Dortmund, he's not exactly tearing up trees and, being that absolute guy. So it is one of those, you are basing it on his potential. And we have seen that potential. I'll never forget that West Ham goal. But supposedly we are looking to slash the price to 21 mil just to facilitate the deal going over the line. And that will still represent a book profit. Carney's been on the books for a little while now. He's seen a lot of managers come in and out of Chelsea and just never really got his chance. And it's a bit of a shame because looking at the kind of players we're looking at buying now, your Xavi Simons, and we're targeting people like Morgan Rogers. I think if Carney would have managed to consistently get game time. Obviously, it was kind of the injury that curtailed it all, but it looks like he could fit that role of that, you know, deep to dual number 10 or just that kind of creative number 10 role. He could probably do that quite well in our team if he'd have developed the way we wanted him to. But no, it doesn't seem to be that way. And another thing about Blueco is they're up for giving youngsters chances, right? But not for a really long time. I think one of the things we're absolutely not really going to see from Blueco in general is you get a chance, you go away for a while, but then you come back and we give you another chance. I think it is going to be a pretty rotating door in that respect. And while we can still make some money, if not very much, for Carney Chukwumeka, then that's probably what we should do. We are already technically up from what we thought we were going to be this season, just based on the João Felix sale to Al Nassr, right? We were looking at losing money on João Felix by selling him to Benfica, but Superheroes Al Nassr swooped in and saved the day, giving us a combined and eventual £42 million for him. So I guess if you're looking at balancing the books that way, we can now afford to take a little bit less on Chukwumeka than we originally wanted to, and it is ultimately more important that we just get him off the books. So that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up for today. Just a few little tidbits to talk about. Let me know what you think about my new little graphical stuff. Is it too much? Is it distracting? Do you like it? Ultimately, as I'm trying to get towards that 1,000 subs, the other thing I'm trying to do is do my absolute best to make sure that you guys are staying and are engaged in the content that I'm making. I am making this content for you, not me. So if I'm doing something in it that is making you click off, whether it be too many or a lack of graphics or a certain presentation style, please let me know in the comments, because like I say, man, all I want to do is make content for you. I hope you guys have a wicked day, and I can't wait to catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.